Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 5 of Become a Citizen Developer, in which we would be discussing about Excel automation. We all would agree to that Excel plays a very important role in our routine task, right from creating Excel reports to doing calculations to generating reports to running macros and so on and so forth. So let's see how we can actually put all these work into automation. So first of all, what is Excel automation? Excel automation refers to any task automation or any process automation that is related to our Excel files. And StudioX has a dedicated set of activities for Excel, which means all the functions or all the processes that we perform using Excel can actually be automated using StudioX. So some common tasks are reading the Excel data, writing something to the Excel file, filtering the data based on our criteria, copy pasting the entire range of data from one Excel to another Excel, Vlookup, which is to look up to a certain row, a certain column, or to look up to a particular value, then sorting the range as per our need in ascending or descending order. Moving further, what can be the use cases of Excel, or where can we actually put our Excel automation in use? So it's reading and writing a huge amount of data, which definitely is a very tedious task, can actually be automated, creating report and then using email automation, sending it to the concerned team if required, filling in the data in form from Excel, wherein we read the data from the Excel, and if we have to fill it to some form, we can do that. Check for duplicate records. If we want to run any macro, so we can do that. And we can also perform a lot of calculations as we normally do using Excel. Last but not the least, we can also do data migration using Excel. So now that we've seen what all are the use cases of Excel, let's actually see that how can we actually put in and use the Excel activities that are present with StudioX. So let's move towards StudioX to see the practical implementation of the same. So here we have two files. So I'm going to show you one by one what is the file content, and then we'll see what are we going to achieve when we build this automation. So we have an annual report and we have an April expenses file. So let me just open both the files. Okay. So if you see, this is the April expenses file, which has the month name written, which has the first name written and the last name written, and then we have the expenses for each of the candidates. So what are we going to do is we would introduce one more column here, which would be the full name, which is the concatenation of the first name and the last name. So over here we'll get John Smith, over here we'll get Jane Dorsey written, and so on and so forth. So this is the first task that we would be doing. We would be concatenating column B and column C, and we'll introduce another column by the name full name. So we can introduce it here or we can introduce it here. Then we have an annual report also. So we have March, February, January in the order, and we would be introducing a new sheet over here by the name of April, which means the expenses of April month. So we would be introducing a sheet. So we have the template in here. We'll copy the template as it is. And then we'll see that, okay, if Albert Kipling is there in that April expenses sheet. So what is it? So sorry, not Albert Kipling, Jane Dorsey, because you have to see employee expenses. So we'll match that if this employee exists in April expenses sheet. So we have Jane Dorsey here. So what is his expenses? We'll read it from here and we're going to put it in the annual report file. Okay. So this is what we would be achieving using Excel automation. So let's see how we'll do that. So first and foremost, let's do one by one. We're going to introduce a new column here and concatenate B and C column to get the full name written. So if I come back here, you can click on Excel to get all the Excel activities that you have. So to use any Excel activity, you first have to use an Excel file, which is you create a scope. Okay. So this is very important, and inside this only you're going to use all the Excel operations. So from here, either you can paste the value as it is, or you can browse for file. So I'm going to browse for file and select my April expenses sheet. you can give it a name. So by default, an Excel name is already given, but I would suggest you to give a meaningful name so that you actually know what you're referring to. So I'm gonna give it April expense. Okay. So this Excel sheet would now be referred by the name April expense. Now, if I look at the April expense sheet, I have to go row by row. So first row, second row, third row, and so on and so forth. So because I have to iterate row by row, and as I told you in the previous episode, for iterating, you use for each or for loop. Okay. So as of now, we have Excel for each row, which means this is gonna iterate one by one to each row. So I'm gonna specify the range as well. So the range will be April expense sheet. You don't have to, worry about the sheet name or anything. So that's the beauty of StudioX. Because you don't have to code anything, they provide you as many options as possible so that you actually don't have to think a lot. You just have to, get used to the navigation of how actually it works. So you need not to worry about, specifying the range or making it dynamic or anything as such. Instead, you must just get used to how to navigate and how to select or where to choose. So I need not to worry about what is the range and all of that. Instead, I'll just click on this plus button and it will keep giving me option. And I just have to, be this much used to the tool so that I know that I have to select the April expense Excel file, and inside that Excel file, this is my sheet name. So I've selected, okay. So now that I have that, now that I've selected one by one row, I also have to make sure that I have to introduce a column as well. Okay. So if you look here, so you would find a insert column option. So now because I have to introduce a column, the range would be the same. Where do I want to have that column? In the April expense file. Okay. So I want to have it before some column. So for that also I have an option. Okay, so if I select the range, where do I want to have, like before which column do I want to insert this column? So I'll say before expenses, I want to insert this column. Okay, so now over here, I have to tell that what should be the name of the column. So I'll say the name of the column should be full name. Okay, so this becomes my header. Now let me do this thing that let me just comment this much and run this file to see what it does. Okay, so I'm going to give it a run to see that whether it actually introduces a column or it does not. It does introduce a column. Okay, so you can see a full name column is here. Okay, now moving further, now that I have to iterate one by one over it. So I already have put in my Excel for each row. Now I have to concatenate it and write it. And when I say I have to write it, which means I have to use a write cell activity. Okay. So enter a text or formula in a cell. If you hover over any activity, you will actually get to know what that activity does. To make your job easier, annotations are given very nicely. So wherever you're confused, you can just hover over the activity and you get to know the function. So our file does have headers. As we can see, our file does have headers. These are not the data, these are the headers. So because it has headers, we're going to click that, okay, it has headers. We're going to check it. Now, what do we want to write? Okay, so what do we want to write? We want to write the first name and last name. We want to concatenate it and write it, right? Which means, what do we want to write? We want to write current row first name, and then we want to write current row last name. Okay, it is overwriting. So what you're gonna do, you will open this in an advanced editor, okay, or text editor. So I'm gonna delete it. Okay, so I want to write current row first name, give a space because there has to be a space between first name and last name. And then I want to write the last name. Okay, so I've written it. Where do I want to write it? So I want to write it in current row full name. Okay, so I'll save it and I'll give this thing a run. Okay, but since we've already added this column, I'm going to delete it. Okay, Yeah. And let me just give this thing a run. Okay. And let's just wait that it adds that particular column full name and then adds the name. Okay. So we're done here. It has added the name. Now what next? Next comes that we have to search for the name in the other sheet, which is this particular sheet. In this particular sheet, we have to make sure that a template gets created by the same name, which is April. Okay. So I'm going to use Excel file inside this only. So use Excel file. And this time I'm going to refer to the annual report. Okay. And let me reference it as a meaningful name, which is annual report. Okay. Now I want to duplicate a sheet. So this template sheet, I want to duplicate. Okay. And as we know that we want to duplicate it, so there is already a dedicated activity for it, which is duplicate sheet. So I'm going to drag this. Which sheet do I want to duplicate? I want to duplicate the template sheet. Okay. What name do I want to give to this sheet? So as of now, this is an April expense sheet. We can write April, but to make it more dynamic, suppose if a new month Excel comes in, this time we are doing April, but then we want to run the same automation for the next month as well, which could be May, June, July, anything. So we want to make it as dynamic as possible so that when it comes for the next month, we actually don't have to change the code, which means if we indicate here, so the robot if can read the month directly from here, and we need not to hard code it, right? Because if we write April here like this, okay, what happens if we, to make our job easier, as of now we can write April as it is, okay, but we cannot run the same automation for the next month. To make this automation reusable so that it works for every month, we have to make it dynamic, which means what if we indicate that, okay, go to the sheet, okay, and whatever is present here, just read it. So if today April is present, it's going to read April. But if tomorrow there is some other month mentioned, it will read that month. So it has become reusable for every month. Now, once we have duplicated the sheet, okay, so let's just run it and see, okay, what happens. Okay. Let me also delete this. And let's give this thing a run. So it is done doing this and it has created an April sheet as well. So if you go back here, you see the full name column has been created, but if you come here, the April sheet is also created. Okay. Now all we have to do is we have to look up for this John Smith in the April expense sheet and get it expenses from that sheet and write it here, which means now we have to iterate one by one over this sheet, annual report. Okay. So we will use Excel for each row for that, Excel for each row. And this time we will iterate over annual report April sheet. Okay. Which means we will iterate here one by one. Okay. Now we have to do a VLOOKUP. We have to look for this particular employee name in that sheet. Where? In the April expense sheet. Okay. Which means we will perform a VLOOKUP. So let's get a VLOOKUP activity here dragged in. Okay, what value do we want to look up? We want to go to the annual report sheet, indicate in Excel. No, we want to go to current row. Okay, and okay, we have not checked for headers. So let's check headers. Once we check for headers, we'll be able to see the name here. So we want to look up the employee name. Okay. So here we want to look the employee in the April expense sheet. Okay. In range. Now in range means where do you want to look up? Okay. So we will go in range in the April expense sheet. Okay. So we can use indicate in Excel. We can actually indicate over here. So we'll say we want to look up in this range, which means we'll look for the full name and we will get it expenses. We'll click on confirm. So this is the range where we want to look up. Column index will be 2. Okay. So let's give it a number 2. Now, where do we want to save it? Okay. What and why have we given this 2? Because what is that we want? We have selected the range. So we'll check for this, but we want to get this. Okay. So that is what column index is used for. In case whenever you're confused, you can just hover. Okay. So the column number in the range containing the value to return. When we are searching between the range D to E, what do we want to return? We want to return E, which means the expenses. Where do we want to save it? Now we want to save it in current row expenses column. Okay. Now we have completed whatever we wanted to achieve. It will create the full name here. It will get the expenses and write it over here. Okay. So let's also delete this sheet and get this program running. So let's give this thing a run. So first it will go to the April expense sheet, create the full name. Then we'll do the VLOOKUP and then we'll copy the expenses. So you see how it is switching between the Excels because it is doing a VLOOKUP. So now just to verify if everything has been done correctly or not. So for Stanham, it's 17,000. Let's go back there and see. Okay, for Stanham, it's 17,000. Okay. So this is how you, now if you had to do this manually, as of now, there are only 11 records, so you can do it. But what if there was 11K records? Then it becomes very time consuming for us to do this. And there's also a lot of chance for human error to happen in this particular process. So it's better that we put our robot into action to perform this task. Okay. One other thing, what I would like to show you is there is also a table extraction option available here, which is actually data extraction or table extraction, whatever you call it. So suppose if you get a scenario like this, wherein you have to read certain thing from say website or any browser. Okay, so you have to hover over one page, get in the data, write it into Excel file. That also becomes very time consuming and also, has a lot of chance for human error, because if you have to copy this ID, now as of now, you can copy and paste it, but there are some websites that do not allow you to copy it. And even if you can copy it, it becomes, very tedious to, every time come here, copy, go back to Excel, paste it. And as of now, there are 4 pages, but what if there were 40 pages? So there is also a built-in mechanism named data extraction. All you have to do is you have to, make it identify it. Sometime okay, so it says select the element. Okay, so I'll select one of the elements. So I'll select an element. As I select one element, okay, it says you selected a table cell. Would you like to extract the data from the whole table? So how easy it is. As I say yes, it will extract the data from the whole table. Okay, so here is the data. When I click on finish, now over here, if I want to have 100 records or 10 records or 20 records, I can mention. But if I want to have all the records possible, I'll give a 0. 0 for all, which means if there are 100 records or if there are 1,000 records, it will get all the records. And as I click on finish, it will ask me, is data spanning multiple pages, which means, is the data distributed across different pages? So as you can see, there's a next option, which means the data is scattered over different pages. So I'll say yes. So as I say yes, it will give me an option. How do we go on to the next page? So we go on to the next page by clicking on next. So I'll click on next. Okay. And that's it. That is all you had to do to actually get the data out of the table. And if I want to actually save this in some Excel files, I'm going to use Excel file, because as I told you, to save anything or perform any operation related to Excel, you have to use Excel file. Okay, that's the only option out. So I'm going to browse a file. Where do I want to save the data that has been extracted? So I'm going to save it in table data. Okay. And I'll get this inside the use Excel file. Once I get this inside a use Excel file, the advantage that we have over here is it has extracted the table data. Now, if I want to directly write this table data into my Excel file, I'll just have to click on this plus button. It will show me Excel. I'll say, okay, sheet 1, paste it in sheet 1. As I give this thing a run, it will actually get the data from the website and save it in my Excel file. So it has come over the website, and now it will click on next, 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 and extract the information present on all the pages, and would then save the entire data into the page, into the Excel file that I've mentioned. So this is also another very useful use case that you can achieve using Excel automation with StudioX. So as you can see, the executor is still running. This green button shows that the executor is running. As soon as the program actually stops running, we'll open the Excel file and see what data is present in there. We know that there are 12 records present as of now here. So we'll see that whether actually 12 records, 12 data is being written into the Excel file as well or not. So it has stopped processing. Let's open the table data. Okay, so here we are with our 12 data, ID, due date, and invoice. Okay. So this is also another very useful use case for Excel automation. Okay. I also have another use case present that I'll show you. It's a bit complex, so I'll show you how you can achieve it. But I would suggest that if you actually try it on your own, because that will help you ultimately. And if definitely if you have difficulties while doing so, we can do it, and we can cover all your queries in the next video as well. So do let me know if you're facing any trouble while trying to complete this particular exercise. But I'm going to show you that what actually this particular exercise is. So there are two files. In one, we have conversion rate. So Euro, USD, JPY, and INR. What are the conversion rates? So this particular sheet contains the conversion rate. Then we have another file which has 5 sheets. So your task is that you have to go one by one to each sheet. You have to get the total price. So whatever the total price is, so it's 79800, which is 79,800 euros. And there is a column named total price USD. So when you see it is in euro, you'll go back to the conversion file, which is here, and you'll see for euro, the conversion rate is 1.18, which means you have to come back here, multiply this thing with 1.18, and then it becomes USD. And over here, you're going to write the price in USD. Similarly, you'll have to do for all the currencies. For USD, the thing remains the same. For JPY, you have to again get the conversion rate from there, multiply it and write it here. And same thing you have to perform for all the files. Okay. I'm going to give you a small clue on how you will achieve this. So initially, I have my opportunities file present in here, which actually contains all this data. Okay. So what I'm going to do, that first of all, I have to iterate over each sheet. Okay. There are 5 sheets. I have to go through each sheet one by one. So for that, I will use for each Excel sheet. The way we have for each Excel row, now first of all, we have to go through each sheet. So we have a for each sheet. Okay. Now we have to find the first and last data row as well. Because why do we have to find this? This also, because at the end, we have to calculate this entire thing and write the total here. So for that, we'll find the first and last data row. So we'll mention the current sheet. We'll mention the column name, which is H over here, H. Okay. So the first data row becomes this, and the last data row actually becomes this. Okay. So when we reach to the last data row, which is 25, if we do 25 plus 126 is where we have to actually write the total. So for that, we are doing the find the first and last data row. Okay. Now, once we have done this, now we'll go through each Excel row. Okay. And we know now one thing to notice here that for every sheet, the data actually starts from 9th row. Okay. So this is common across all the sheets. The data starts from the 9th row. So we know that our range is from B9 to J. Okay. So that is what we've mentioned here. If you see, so we will mention that, okay, in current, in the opportunity sheet, we can indicate in Excel that it starts from B9 to J0. Okay. Now, the other thing what we have to do is when we have to multiply this particular thing, okay, we have to take care that it also has euro appended, which means when we have to multiply 79,800 with the currency rate. Okay, euro has to be removed, which means if we, okay, let me show you on a notepad. Okay, so as of now, we have euro 79,800. Okay, if we split this with this space, okay, so the number to the right becomes the amount and the number to the left becomes the currency. Okay, so for that, we have done this text to left and right, save the text to the left as currency code and text to the right as amount. Okay. And this is to replace that comma so that our multiplication becomes easy. Now we can have a switch case. As I showed you in the last class, we have 4 currency conversion: USD, JPY, EUR, and INR. So I've done it for one, EUR. Similarly, you're going to do it for USD, JPY, and INR. Okay. What we have done in EUR is we know the correct amount, which is 79,800, and we have to multiply it with conversion rate EUR to USD, which is this one, 1.18. Okay, this is the conversion rate. So we're going to multiply it with that. And where do we want to write it? We want to write it in current row, total price USD. So if you select over here, current row, total price USD. Okay. As of now, it is not showing because I did not give it a run and there are already multiple files open, but you'll be able to see it very easily when you select current row. Over here, you'll be able to see total price USD, the same way we were able to see in the April expense sheet. Here is where we want to actually paste it. So we have selected this particular column. Once this is done, it's gonna calculate, multiply it with the conversion rate and write it there. To show you how it will work, I will delete all this thing, all these values from here. Like from some, I'll do that. Okay, so I've deleted it from 2 sheets. Let me also delete it from other sheets to clear any confusion if it's there. Okay, delete it from this sheet as well. 1 sheet is left. Let me also delete it from that sheet. I think we're good to go. Let me close the file to make it look cleaner and to avoid any confusions. We'll also close this as well. Okay. And I'll give this thing a run to show you how it will actually convert the EUR values to USD and write it into that file. Because I've only done it for EUR, so wherever the currency code matches, it's gonna convert and write in there. Okay, it says does not exist. Okay, understood. Let me just change the path. It says it does not exist because the path has been changed. So I will just mention the path. It is opportunities here. Okay, I've corrected the path. And that is why it was not showing the column name also, because the path that we gave is wrong. Okay, and if I go to resources, not resources, data manager, I'll have to make sure conversion rate has been exported correctly. Just to avoid any confusion, I'm going to export it again, conversion rate. I'll, delete this particular conversion rate and export it again. Delete it. I'm going to export the conversion rate file again. Okay. And now I'll give this thing a run. So as you can see, this green button in here, which means the execution has started. It has opened the conversion file and it has opened the other file, and it is calculating sheet by sheet and actually writing in the calculated value, which is the total price USD. Let me just zoom in so that you can see it. It has come to the fourth sheet, and now it will go to the last sheet, calculate the EUR value and write in the values. Let me now open the opportunity sheet to show you the output. So here is the output for all the files written in here. So that is how, and this even seems complex if you had to do it manually, but with the help of Excel automation, we made it pretty easy. So this is all what you can achieve using Excel automation, and Excel is anyway a very powerful tool. And when you actually put automation also in place, it can do wonders. So that's all for this video. So stay tuned and we'll come up with another episode covering another interesting topic of become a citizen developer. So till then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Happy learning.